My sister has no idea I've been reborn. She still insists, just like in my past life, that I choose a fiancé first, pretending to be thoughtful and considerate. However, this time, I refused. In my previous life, I naively believed she meant well. I married the man she recommended, Carter Kane, an heir who is said to have been paralyzed after an ambush. I gave up my right to inherit the family, becoming his caretaker, his crutch, the medicine he used to fight loneliness. However, no matter how much warmth I gave him, his heart remained frozen. The truth only came out during my sister's pregnancy celebration, when an assassin from a rival family raised his gun toward her belly. The man who had not stood in years suddenly rose to his feet. He shoved me toward the muzzle of the gun. All 7 bullets ripped through my body. As I collapsed, I saw him pull my sister into his arms, shielding her with his own body and taking the final shot for her. Only then did I understand. He had never been paralyzed. His family had never abandoned him. He pretended to be sick because Julia's heart belonged to another man, and he refused to be tied to me. "I'm sorry, Tanya," he said. "I lied to you. But I couldn't let Julia lose the heir she's carrying. I'll repay what I owe you in our next life." When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day my father asked us to choose our marriage partners. "Go ahead, sis. You pick first. You're the delicate one, and you need a strong family to have your back." Julia Larson forced a sweet tone, playing the caring sister just like she did in her previous life. However, her eyes betrayed her, locking onto Seth Rogers, the Rogers family heir, with an affection she could not hide. Word in the mafia circles was that she and Seth had been secretly tangled up for ages. Dad would definitely keep Seth for her. That was why I laughed when Dad asked me who I wanted. Since Julia is so thoughtful, I won't hold back. I'll take Seth. What? Julia's smile disappeared as her eyes welled up with tears. "Tanya, you're well aware of my relationship with Seth." Carter's head snapped up, his eyes widening in shock. Then my father's hand struck my face with a force that echoed through the room. "Look at yourself. Seth is the heir to the Rogers family. Do you really think someone like you, an illegitimate daughter, could marry him? You know he's fond of your sister, yet you choose him on purpose. Are you trying to drive your sister to her grave?" Blood trickled from the corner of my mouth, yet I could not help but smile. "Father, if you've already decided, why pretend I have a say? Are you worried about being called unfair?" Julia's lashes quivered as her tears fell in a perfectly timed cascade. "Tanya, don't say that. Father loves you, too. How can you accuse him so unjustly?" Amid our quarrel, Carter, confined to his wheelchair, suddenly braced himself on the armrest and stood up. "Don Larson, I propose a business transaction. I'm aware that your arms dealings have hit a rough patch. I'm willing to invest $5 million to assist you with one condition. You give me your eldest daughter, Julia's, hand in marriage." I glared at Carter, my heart ablaze with disbelief. I never imagined that he, who had pretended to be paralyzed, would choose that moment to stand. He caught my stare, a flicker of remorse in his eyes before he looked away. My heart skipped a beat. He, too, had been reborn. The moment my father heard the offer of money, his rage vanished, replaced by greed. He had set his sights on marrying off his daughters to strengthen the family ties. There was no way he would pass up such a golden opportunity. Besides, the Kanes were a force to be reckoned with, far outstripping the Rogers. It was a stroke of luck that they were interested in Julia. "Fine," Dad said, not missing a beat. "If Carter is head over heels for Julia, then Tanya, you'll marry Seth." Seth shot to his feet. He sneered with disgust. "You think I'd marry you, Tanya? Come on, look in the mirror. You don't hold a candle to Julia. Don't make a fool of yourself, Dad." "What's that supposed to mean, Seth?" he demanded, his voice like ice. "Our families have been tight for ages. My daughter's too good for you. Are you trying to wreck everything?" A look of scorn crossed Seth's eyes. "Forgive me, Don Larson. I'm set on Julia and no one else. I'd rather die than marry Tanya." Julia turned to me, her face a mask of regret, but her lips twitched with a hidden smirk. "Seth, remember, my sister risked her health to save you. Even if she's not your favorite, show her some compassion," she cooed. Seth's eyes warmed as he looked at my sister. "You're my hero, Julia." He then shot me a venomous look. If you hadn't kept playing the I saved your life card, I would have married Julia long ago. I said coldly, if my dear sister loves Seth so much, yet can't stop glancing at Carter, maybe she should just marry them both. Julia's face turned red. What if I told you I don't want either of them? I said calmly. That was when I asked to go to New Cordova to handle the failing family business. I deleted Carter's number and left. In New Cordova, I was ignored. So I let my work speak. I closed a massive deal that had been frozen for years. For the first time, my name meant something. On my mother's death anniversary, Julia and Carter appeared again. Julia accused me of using improper ways to succeed. Carter grabbed my arm and demanded I apologize. I refused and walked away. That night, Seth and Carter cornered me. Julia had lost everything at a casino and was being held for her debt. The debt was $1 billion. In the VIP room, Julia was trembling. Seth turned to the manager and said Tanya is the Larson too. She can take Julia's place. The manager smirked and said she would be valuable. Carter refused at first, until Julia cried that she was afraid. He turned to me and said, Tanya, just stay here. I'll come back for you. As the door closed behind them, I smiled. The soldiers revealed themselves. The tracker in my ring was destroyed. That night, one message spread through the family. Tanya is dead. And from that moment on, the weak woman named Tanya no longer existed. Only vengeance remained. They thought I was trapped. Dragged off that plane by Seth and his men, his grip tightening on my arm as he hissed, Julia jumped from the balcony because of you. She's in surgery. You're coming with me to save her. My bodyguards reacted fast, but Carter arrived faster, flanked by twice as many men in black. In the end, it was 10 against 3. My security went down one by one. Seth forced me to the ground, the impact sending a sharp pain through my cheek as the world tilted. All of this, he snarled, is because you couldn't keep your mouth shut about Julia. When I lifted my eyes, Carter was standing just behind him, expression like ice. Take her to the hospital, he ordered. She's the best match. Best match. For a split second, the pressure in my chest almost drowned the fury. So that was my value to them now, a compatible donor. The hospital room reeked of disinfectant and cold air. They kept me on the bed, a needle sliding into my vein as blood flowed into the bag. My head grew light. The ceiling blurred. The patient is already anemic, the nurse said quietly. If we keep drawing, there will be serious risk. Carter's hand closed over mine, as if that made anything better. Just a little more, Tanya. Julia's still in emergency. She needs blood. Hold on for her, okay? Hold on. For her. My lips curved. Of course. Even my blood had to go to my loving sister. The second bag filled. My vision washed gray around the edges. A nurse hesitated, moving toward the door. This is too much. I need the attending's authorization. Before she could finish, alarms sounded in the hallway. Doctors hurried past. A man in a white coat stuck his head in. Prep the surgery suite. The patient's condition just worsened. She needs an immediate transplant. Schedule the donor. The donor. All eyes swung toward me. My father appeared then, breathless, still in his tailored suit, tie askew. He didn't even glance at me. Where do I sign? He demanded. The doctor handed him a clipboard. Your eldest daughter, Julia Larson, has entered cardiac failure. Her only living relative with a compatible profile is your second daughter, Tanya. Given the urgency. I'll sign, my father cut in, pen already scraping across the form. Do whatever it takes to save Julia. Dad, I said, my voice hoarse. You're signing away my life. He still didn't look at me. You're her sister. Of course you'll do this for her. The doctor turned to Carter. Mr. Kane, we'll need you to confirm consent as next of kin, given your engagement. I'm not engaged to her, Carter said, eyes on the floor. But I'll take responsibility for the donor's compensation later. Compensation. I almost laughed. They moved quickly to transfer me to a gurney. I forced myself upright, fingers clutching the rail, my body trembling from blood loss. Carter. My voice sliced through the chaos. He froze. Look at me. Slowly, he did. For a heartbeat, I saw something like guilt in his eyes. Then it was gone. You really don't see it, do you? I whispered. Julia has always been healthy. I'm the one who's been sick since I was a child. You know that. He opened his mouth, then shut it. His jaw clenched. Her collapse, the balcony, this sudden heart failure, I swallowed back a wave of dizziness. It's all her script. You know that too. His eyes flickered. He knew. He just didn't care enough. I'm sorry, Tanya, he said finally. I can't watch Julia die. So you'll watch me disappear instead? I asked softly. The gurney jerked as they started to wheel me away. Carter stepped closer, gripping the side, leaning down as if to comfort me. I promise. When this is over, I'll make it right. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Just endure this one last time. One last time. I let my head fall back against the pillow and closed my eyes. Fine. Let's see who endures what. The surgical lights above me were blinding, harsh circles in a white ceiling. Anesthesia ready? Someone asked. Ready, another voice answered. My heartbeat drummed slowly in my ears. I heard my own breathing, steadier than anyone else's. Then a quiet whisper near my ear, Miss Larson. It's time. I opened my eyes. The anesthesiologist's mask covered most of his face, but I recognized the eyes. Calm. Precise. The same man who'd given a guest lecture at my firm in New Cordova about medical investment portfolios. The same man Ethan had introduced me to. A chill of satisfaction slid through me. The syringe brushed my skin, but no drug entered my vein. Instead, the beeping on the monitor suddenly spiked. Cardiac arrhythmia. The assistant shouted on cue. BP dropping. The alarm shrieked. Start compressions. We're losing her. The room exploded into practiced chaos. Shadows moved over me, blocking the harsh light. Someone threw a sheet over my body. Time of death? The attending murmured. 22:43, the anesthesiologist replied calmly. Inform the family. The donor didn't make it. And just like that, Tanya Larson died. The rooftop wind was icy, whipping the hospital gown around my legs as I stepped out of the service stairwell. Below, dozens of emergency lights flashed in the night. The hospital courtyard swarmed with people, Seth pacing, my father shouting, Carter moving like a trapped animal. From up here, they were just dots. A helicopter waited on the landing pad, rotors already turning. A man in a black coat leaned against the open door, his tie whipping in the wind, expression amused. Took you long enough, Ethan Vale called over the roar. I pulled the borrowed coat tighter around me, the fourth tape still on my arm, bare feet stinging on the cold concrete. The anesthesiologist slipped past me, pulling off his mask and bowing his head slightly to Ethan. Mr. Vale. The scene is set. The hospital has recorded Ms. Larson's time of death. There will be no loose ends. Good work, Ethan replied. Your bonus will hit your account by morning. Then his gaze returned to me, eyes dark and sharp. Ready, Tanya? He asked. I looked down one last time. In the chaos below, I could make out my father collapsing onto a bench, a nurse trying to calm him. Seth was slamming his fist into a wall. Carter had both hands tangled in his hair, head dropped, shoulders shaking. A nurse rushed out, shouting something. From here, I couldn't hear the words. But I knew the line. I'm sorry. The donor didn't make it. I smiled. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Ethan offered his hand to help me into the helicopter. From tonight on, he murmured as the door slid shut, drowning out the noise below, Tanya Larson is officially dead. Good, I said. Let her stay that way. The helicopter lifted off, the hospital shrinking to a toy below us. As we rose into the night sky, the city lights spread out like a shattered necklace. In your next life, Ethan added, eyes gleaming in the dim cabin light, what do you want to be? I met his gaze, my voice steady, my heart colder than it had ever been. A woman they can never hurt again. 6 months later, I I stood in front of floor-to-ceiling windows on the west coast, the ocean stretching out in a silver line beyond New Cordova's financial district. The reflection in the glass barely looked like the woman who'd once lain on a hospital gurney. Sharp suit. Heels that didn't wobble. Eyes that didn't dart, didn't plead. "Miss Reed," Ethan said behind me, deliberately using the new identity on my passport, I have to say. "For someone who died recently, you're very productive." I glanced at the report in my hand, the Larson family's latest quarterly results. Red. A sea of red. "You're the one who gave me the knife and showed me where to cut," I said lightly. "I'm just following through." We'd started with small things. An investment fund here. A quiet share purchase there. Taking over stalled Larson projects abroad, consolidating debts they thought were spread too thin to track. They'd been so focused on patching their arms deals and covering Julia's scandals that they hadn't noticed the enemy collecting pieces of their empire overseas. "What do you think?" I asked, tapping the page. "Another 3 months and Larson Arms will burn itself out faster than a cheap cigar." "Less, if we give the public a little nudge," Ethan replied. He turned his laptop toward me. "Our friends in media are ready." On the screen, a thumbnail froze over security footage. A teenage Julia in a school uniform, cornering a smaller girl in a bathroom, yanking her hair while water splashed everywhere. Timestamps. Dates. Witness statements. Underneath, a headline draft glowed. Socialite Julia Larson accused of high school bullying, victim's tragic end raises questions. My fingers tightened around the mug I was holding. I remembered the girl. She had once tried to sit next to me in the cafeteria. Julia had laughed, draped an arm around my shoulders, and said loudly, "Tanya hates clingy people. Don't bother her again." 3 weeks later, that same girl stopped coming to class. Julia's Instagram had never paused. "Post it," I said. "You're sure?" Ethan asked quietly. "Yes." I met his gaze. If Julia wants to live as a saint, she can do it in the papers of her criminal record. Within 24 hours, the story exploded. Parents boycotted every school, charity and program tied to the Larson name. Old victims came forward to add their stories. My father's carefully crafted image as a philanthropic arms magnate went up in flames. Larson stock plunged. And Vail Capital, under a web of shell companies, bought everything. By the time the investigation closed, the Larson family no longer owned their flagship company. I did. "Well done," Ethan said one night as we watched the news anchor announce Larson Arms' bankruptcy filing. "In less than a year, you've gone from sacrificial lamb to the shark that swallowed the butcher." I swirled the wine in my glass, the screen's light reflecting crimson across my knuckles. "It's just the beginning," I said. The first time I saw my father again, he didn't recognize me. I was standing beside Ethan in a hotel conference hall, attending a closed-door meeting about restructuring Larson's remaining assets. My hair was shorter now, my eyes sharper, my clothes nothing like the simple dresses I'd worn back at the mansion. He squinted at me for a long moment, frown deepening. "You're?" he began. "Ms. Reed," Ethan supplied smoothly. "Our lead negotiator. She handles complicated situations very well." Our eyes met only for a second. I saw it then, the exhaustion, the panic, the cracks in a man who had always been unshakable. For a heartbeat, a younger part of me waited for him to call my name. He didn't. "Ms. Reed," he said instead, forcing a smile. "I hope you'll be fair to my daughter." I tilted my head. "Which one?" His smile faltered. News of Julia's bullying scandal was only the first domino. The investigation dug up more. Falsified medical records, charity funds lost in paperwork, friends coerced into taking the fall for her mistakes. Within months, the crown jewel of the Larson name, beloved socialite Julia, became a curse. Then, quietly, came the arrest. Accessory to fraud. Perjury. Tampering with medical evidence, Ethan read off the report one morning, flipping pages with lazy efficiency. Quite a list. I stared at the mug in my hands. "What's her sentence?" I asked. He named a number. I nodded. It matched the number in my head. "Well?" Ethan asked, voice infuriatingly mild. Do you feel better? No, I said truthfully. But I feel finished. He studied me, then set the report aside and moved closer. Revenge is a messy meal, he said softly. You rarely walk away full. But you've earned the right to choose what comes after. His fingers brushed my knuckles, gentle but firm. When you're ready, he added, I'd rather talk about our future than your past. Our. The word startled me more than it should have. Once, I'd been willing to spend a lifetime by the bedside of a man who never looked at me, to sacrifice myself for a sister who smiled while she sharpened the blade. Ethan never asked me to sacrifice. He simply stayed. Through the late nights and the panic attacks, the insomnia and the days when revenge felt somehow more empty than my old life. And he never demanded my story in exchange. That, more than anything, made me want to tell it. The day Vale Capital's takeover of Larson Arms hit the front page of the Wall Street Journal, Ethan took me to Milan. I thought it was a business trip. It wasn't. We were standing under the soaring arches of the Duomo when he suddenly dropped to one knee, a velvet box in his hand, the murmur of tourists fading into a blur. Tanya, he caught himself, then smiled faintly. Or should I say Miss Reed? Ms. Larson? You change names like other people change seasons. I stared at him, stunned, heartbeat in my throat. I'm not good at speeches, he said, which was a lie. He talked an oil tycoon into selling a refinery over coffee last month. But I can say this, I have seen you at your lowest and your brightest. I know you don't trust promises. I know you're used to standing alone. His gaze held mine, unwavering. So I'm not promising perfection, he went on. I'm promising presence. Your ambition, I'll stand beside it. Your scars, I'll help you carry them. You'll never have to face another knife alone. My vision blurred. Ethan opened the box. Inside, a simple ring caught the Italian sun. Not flashy. Not ostentatious. Just steady. Marry me, he said quietly. Not because you need me. Because you choose me? For a moment, the ghosts of two lives pressed down on my chest, gunshots, hospital lights, a future cut open on a table. Then I breathed. Fine, I whispered, fighting a watery smile. But don't expect me to be a gentle bride. His answering grin was devastating. I'd be bored if you were. 3 months later, I walked down the aisle of a sun-drenched church overlooking the sea. This time, I wasn't in a family mansion I hadn't chosen, surrounded by relatives calculating my dowry. I had chosen the venue. The dress. The man waiting at the altar. Ethan stood beneath the arch, suit immaculate, eyes fixed on me like I was the only person in the room. Sunlight streamed through stained glass, painting his shoulders in color. Halfway down the aisle, a shout shattered the silence. Tanya. The name crashed over the pews like a wave. The music faltered. The doors at the back of the church slammed open. Carter stood there, hair messy, eyes bloodshot, tie hanging loose. Security tried to block him, but he pushed past, stumbling down the aisle until he dropped to his knees in front of me. Tanya, he gasped, looking up at me like a man who'd crawled out of a long nightmare. You're alive. I knew it. I knew it. The church held its breath. I dug through every report, he said, voice cracking. The hospital records, the transfer logs, the surgeon's files. At first I thought I was going crazy, but, he laughed, a broken, awful sound. You disappeared too cleanly. That's not how death works. I stayed very still, bouquet steady in my hands. He grabbed my wrist, fingers trembling. I know everything now, he whispered. Julia's lies. The fake illness. The forged tests. I sent her to prison myself. I signed away half the Kane Group to pay for the lawsuit. I did what I should have done years ago. Tears blurred his vision. I was blind. I chose her over you. I destroyed you. I know that. But I've been trying to make it right ever since. Please. Just give me a chance to stay by your side. Not as your husband, not if you don't want that, just let me protect you. Let me atone. He pulled something from his pocket. A ring. Silver. Simple. Familiar. I found the design we used in our first life, he said hoarsely. The ring we never got to exchange. I've been carrying it ever since I realized what I'd done. He reached for my hand, trying to slide it onto my finger. Ethan moved, but I lifted my free hand slightly. It was fine. I needed to say this myself. I pulled my hand back. The ring slipped from his fingers and hit the marble with a small, brittle sound, rolling until it disappeared under a pew. Carter stared at the empty space like his world had fissured. Why? He whispered. Why won't you take it? I looked at him for a long moment. All this time, I said softly, you still don't understand. I bent slightly, my veil brushing the front of my dress. You think love is about atonement. That if you lose enough, you can rewind the past. My voice didn't shake. It surprised me a little. But I didn't need your shares. Or Julia in prison. Or your guilt. He flinched. What did you need then? He rasped. Just once, I said, I needed you to stand on my side when it mattered. At the hospital. On the balcony. In that operating room. I begged you with my eyes, and you chose her every single time. His face crumpled. You're right, he said. I was a coward. Yes, I agreed. You were. And now? I'm not the girl who waits for your courage anymore. I straightened. Carter, I said quietly, I don't love you. Not in this life. Not in the last, if I'm honest. I loved an illusion, a man I thought you could be. I glanced down at the fallen ring. That illusion is gone, I finished. Just like Tanya Larson. He stared at me like I'd taken the ground out from under him. Behind me, I felt Ethan's presence. Solid. Steady. Not pulling, not pushing. Just there. I reached back, fingers curling around his. This man, I said, turning slightly so the whole church could hear, is my choice. Not my obligation. Not my atonement. My choice. Ethan's hand tightened around mine. A broken laugh escaped Carter's throat. No, he said, shaking his head, eyes wild. No, that's not how it ends. We have 2 lives between us, Tanya. 2 lives. You can't throw that away for someone who just showed up in the second. He staggered to his feet, chest heaving. I won't accept it, he choked out. If you won't walk away from him, I'll. He fumbled at his jacket, pulling out something small and sharp. Gasps echoed through the room. Carter, someone shouted. He lifted it slightly, hand shaking. If my life is the only thing left I can give you, then maybe. Stop, I said sharply. His eyes found mine. If you do this, I continued, you're not doing it for me. You're doing it to punish me for moving on. For choosing someone who didn't destroy me first. He froze. You want a grand gesture? I asked. Fine. How about this, live? Live with the knowledge of what you did. Of who you chose. Live every day knowing you were offered a second chance and you showed up too late. His hand trembled. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd gotten through. Security closed in slowly, ready to intervene. A groomsman stepped forward, voice calm, coaxing him to lower his hand. After a long, agonizing moment, the sharp object slipped from his fingers and clattered harmlessly to the floor. Carter's shoulders sagged. He didn't fall because of any wound. He simply sank to his knees, finally crushed under the weight of his own choices. It rained on the day of Carter's funeral. Of course it did. New Cordova had a way of making clichés feel inevitable. I stood at the edge of the cemetery, black umbrella raised, watching from a distance as the coffin was lowered. Kane family members clutched tissues. Business partners murmured behind dark sunglasses. No one noticed the woman in the back whose name was supposed to be on a granite slab months ago. You came, a voice said quietly. I turned. Seth Rogers stood a few steps away, hair soaked, suit jacket open, eyes older than I remembered. The usual arrogance was gone, washed out of him. Surprised? I asked. He shook his head. Not really, he said. You're stubborn like that. He studied me for a long moment. I owe you an apology, he said finally. For Julia. For that night at the casino. For letting them drag you into that hospital. For not seeing you when you were right in front of me. He swallowed. I told myself it was all Julia's lies. Her tears. Her schemes. But the truth is, I wanted to believe her. She was easy to adore. You were easy to use. The bluntness caught me off guard. I watched the footage, he went on, voice low. The bullying. The hospital records. The falsified tests. I saw every way she stepped on you to keep herself clean. He laughed softly, bitterly. We were kids together, you know? You even pulled me out of the lake once. I almost drowned. His jaw tightened. I told myself it was Julia who saved me. I let her rewrite the story right in front of you. I didn't even bother to question it. I remembered the weight of his body as I'd shoved him toward the shore. The cold water closing over my head. The cough that had never really gone away after that winter. I owe you my life, he said simply. And this mess of guilt is all I have to offer in return. It's pathetic, I know. But if you ever need. I don't, I said gently. He stopped. I don't need anything from you, I repeated, not unkindly. Your apology is late. But I heard it. He nodded slowly. And? He asked. And that's as far as it goes, I said. Let it end here, Seth. With the rain. With the coffin. With the girl you all broke long before she ever hit the ground. His eyes closed. When he opened them again, there was resignation there. And maybe, just maybe, a fragile hint of understanding. Goodbye, then, he said. Goodbye, I answered. I left him standing there, rain soaking his expensively cut suit, as I walked toward the road where Ethan's car waited. He opened my door, took the umbrella, and kissed my forehead. How was it? He asked quietly. Necessary, I said. But not important. He smiled a little. That sounds like closure. I looked out the window as the cemetery receded behind us, nothing but wet stone and dark umbrellas. Closure isn't clean, I said. It's just choosing to stop looking backward. Then choose, Ethan replied. And I'll keep driving. I watched the city rise ahead of us, glass, steel, possibility. The girl who'd once thought marriage was the only way out was gone. So was the woman who'd lain on an operating table, waiting for a man to take her side. What remained was someone new. Still scarred. Still complicated. But finally, unquestionably, mine. I reached for Ethan's hand, lacing our fingers together. Drive, I said. We've got a life to live. And for the first time in 2 lifetimes, the future didn't feel like a sentence. It felt like freedom.